I bought a Seiko. I've been talking about it for a while. I've been thinking about it for a while. I used to own one of my favorite watches, and one of the reasons why I kind of got into YouTube, that was my SBDC 061, a recreation of the Marine Master. They used to call it the Baby Marine Master. I would imagine they still do. These are on the more affordable side for Seiko, really good looking watches, and I've always wanted to replace that watch in my collection. I sold it a long time ago to fund another watch. There was a misalignment in the bezel of that watch. I wasn't too torn up about selling it. It was one of my favorite watches in my collection, and I did get rid of it. And today I have replaced that watch. Finally, after years of not replacing it, I have replaced it. This time with something a little bit nicer, an SLA 079. And I was so excited when I got this watch, and then immediately Seiko stabbed me in the back. I'll explain exactly what I mean during the video. But anyway, I do have a new watch, and I am very excited to show you guys my new SLA 079. So let's take a look. Hands on. So I haven't owned a Seiko in years. A Seiko diver. I've owned Seikos. I still have a Seiko or two in my collection. I have my original SKX, and I still have my SLQ, which I will probably never sell. I'll never sell either of those watches. But I always owned a Seiko diver that was somewhat more high-end in my collection. I had the SBDC 061. It was a watch that I talked about very often here on my channel, especially when I first started. It was one of the first videos that I made here because I was so inspired by that watch. I thought it was an amazing value compared to the other higher end watches that I had in my collection. I thought that the quality was really good for what you were getting for the price. It was just really good. I sold that watch a long time ago because it did have a QC issue. The 12 o'clock index and it was really the chapter ring did not line up. The bezel did line up with the 12 o'clock index, but the chapter ring didn't, so it was all out of line and it didn't look good. That sort of got me. I couldn't unsee it. I lived with it for a while. I had that watch for many years. I ended up selling it. I always love the Marine Master, the look of the Marine Master. And finally, I have a Marine Master, the real Marine Master, because that was called the Baby Marine Master 200. This is the Marine Master 300. And the SLQ is Seiko's higher end dive watch. This gets an 8L movement. The 8L movement is their higher end movement. It is thinner. It is also used by Grand Seiko under the 9 moniker. This is a tuned down version of it. So you're essentially getting a Grand Seiko movement that is not as decorated and it is not regulated. That's essentially the only difference. So there is decoration, it's just not as nice, and it is not regulated. So it's not as accurate, or technically not as accurate as the Grand Seiko version, that 9 version. This is a dive watch, so you're getting 300 meters of water resistance. You're getting a beautiful bezel on here, and there are notable differences between this and lower end, or I should say less expensive dive watches from Seiko. When you get it in your hand, you're going to notice that this feels more weighty. The bracelet is nicely made compared to those cheaper watches. And the case is just beautiful. The case on these wears smaller than their dimensions, and it just feels like a really substantial watch in hand. It looks really good as well. The materials are just upgraded all the way around, and the polishing is better. Everything is better on these watches. These get Zaratsu polishing. They're a little bit higher end for Seiko. You get a domed sapphire crystal, that ceramic bezel. That ceramic bezel isn't loomed. I wish it was loomed because I think the original Marine Master did have a loomed bezel. Also, this doesn't get a monoblock case. This gets a screwed-in case back, very traditional Seiko. And you have the crown at the 4 o'clock position. Again, very traditional Marine Master. This gets a slightly textured dial. It gets a grainy dial which I really like. I went for the black dial here because it is very straightforward, but it looks like a classic Marine Master. You have applied indices. There is Lumibright, large hands, those large hands that you see on a lot of Seiko. Those are also filled with Lumibright. There is a lot of lume on this dial. The date is between that 4 and 5 o'clock position. It has a color matched date window. You really don't see it at all, and I like that. So it doesn't take the place of the 3 o'clock position. I would prefer that it didn't have a date at all, but if you're going to put the date, put it between the 4 and 5 o'clock position, put a color match date wheel, therefore you don't really see it. It's not in your face. This gets the DiaShield, I think it's called. It's basically a DLC coating, I want to say. It's clear, and it goes on the case. That's basically it, and it's for scratch resistant. It does work pretty well. My old Marine Master, or Baby Marine Master, the SBDC061, had the same coating, and it did work really well. I never really got scratches on that watch. It was worn a lot, and it did not get scratched up. The bezel action on here is what you would expect from Seiko. It's very quiet, but it feels really good. They get really beautiful bezels with large notches in them, and they are very grippy, but silent. You could barely hear it. And I am very lucky because this one does line up perfectly. So there are no misalignments on this watch. I'm not sure if that is a new Seiko thing that they are doing these days. Everything is aligning. I have no idea. This is around a 42.5 millimeter watch. I measured 42.4 at the case and then 41.5 at the bezel. So it doesn't wear like that. It wears more like a 41 millimeter watch, and a lot of Seikos wear that way because they sort of scallop the edges a little bit. It just wears smaller than its dimensions. And then the lug to lug is around 48 and change. You have a thickness of 13.5 millimeters. But again, it doesn't wear those dimensions. It actually wears a little bit smaller on wrist. It wears like a 41 or maybe just about a 42 millimeter watch, but it doesn't wear that big. The only problem with this watch is that pretty much immediately after I decided to purchase it, they came out with a new version of it. And that is called an HB. So it's no longer an SLA, it's an HB. I forget the number, I'll throw it up on the screen. And they made some significant changes to it. They also made a change to the price. So the price on this is $2,900. And I don't think you can get this anymore now that they've come out with a new version of it, but I'm not entirely sure. On the secondary market, they are going for around that price. So around 26, maybe you can get them for a little bit less than that, to $2,900 on the secondary market. I got this brand new, $2,900, and I don't regret it. But they did come out with a new version of it, and that does get on-the-fly micro adjust. So that is something I do regret, but they are charging $700 more, so it's $3,600. I'm not sure it's worth that much more money for on-the-fly micro adjust. This fits my wrist perfectly, so it's not that big of a deal. And then they upgraded the movement to the 8L45, so now you're getting 72 hours of power reserve versus this, which gets 50. So that's not that big of a deal either, in my opinion. The biggest difference here, though, is this clasp. The clasp on here, for the price, for what they're offering here, is not that great. It is mostly milled, but there are actually pressed elements at this price. It is a double push button enclosure. The scissor is obviously a milled scissor, but there is a diver's extension. That diver's extension is pressed. That's disappointing. It looks good. It's very functional. And the bracelet's really nice. The bracelet on here is a very nice bracelet. You know, the clasp does let you down a little bit still with Seiko for $2,900. I don't know. I just don't think there should be a dive watch out there that's not offering you a on-the-fly micro adjust option at $2,900, especially when you're Seiko and you have the economies of scale to offer it at $2,900. You shouldn't have to pay an extra $700 for a slightly upgraded movement and a on-the-fly micro adjust clasp. It doesn't make any sense to me. On wrist today, I have my Parallel. This is the Parallel Lab with a peripheral rotor. This is the salmon dial, and I believe it is the only one that they offer currently on a bracelet, and I'm not sure you could actually buy these yet on a bracelet, but if you can, definitely check these out. They are awesome on a bracelet. And there is the SLA 079 by Seiko on my 7.5 inch wrist. I will say that I've worn this a few times now, and people have come over to me and said, wow, you got a Rolex? And I immediately say, no, this is a Seiko, although it looks like a Rolex. It does kind of look like a Rolex if you don't really examine it. And I would say the quality here is not on par with Rolex, but it is getting close to Rolex. It's not Rolex for sure, especially when you look at the bracelet. The bracelet on here is not as good as what Rolex is doing. I think if they add that on the fly micro adjust like they have in the new version, and they upgrade it a little bit more, take out that pressed element, that diver's extension that's, pressed for no reason, it makes it a little bit tinny. I think if they remove those things, you don't need them if you put an on-the-fly micro adjust. I think they are removing it. I have no idea because I haven't seen that watch hands-on. And they make some just minor adjustments to the bracelet. I think it would be on par, quality-wise, with what you're getting from Rolex. That 8L45 is really good, but I think they're going to end up coming out with a smaller version of a Grand Seiko diver, and that is going to take the world by storm. If they come out with a 41mm or a 40mm dive watch that has on-the-fly micro adjust, and they do it right, they are going to take over, and it will go crazy. A lot of people will start buying Grand Seiko divers because right now they don't make a dive watch that even competes with this, in my opinion. All of their dive watches are too big, even for me. And I think that if they made one, even in 42mm like this, it would make a huge difference. LumiBrite never disappoints. I wore this watch when I first got it, and I went into my house or something like that right after I was out in the sun, and I noticed my watch immediately because LumiBrite is very, very, very potent. And you can see here, it is really bright. It lasts for a very long time. And there is lume on everything except for the bezel. Like I said, I wish that the bezel was lumed. If it had a lumed bezel, this would be a little bit nicer and it would make a lot more sense because this is their serious dive watch. This is the Marine Master. It should have all the bells and whistles. So I would say that's probably one of my complaints besides the clasp. Although I really like this watch and I don't think it's really all that bad. It's not the end of the world that it doesn't have lume on the bezel and that there's a pressed element in the bracelet. It's not that big of a deal. But with that being said, if I had everything in the watch, that's what I would do here. I would change that clasp on the fly micro adjust. I don't care about the movement. The 8L35 is just as, it's as good for me as the 8L45, and then I would like a loomed bezel, or at least the first 15 minutes or something like that on the bezel. I think that would look cool. I mean, like I said, price on this is $2,900. The new release, that HB or whatever it's called, is now $3,600. So significant upgrade, significant price. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. I want to hear what you guys have to say. I think this is a really good looking watch that's really well made. There are some obvious flaws with it. I could look past those flaws because it is such a good looking watch, in my opinion. Tell me what you guys think down in the comments below. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, hit that bell icon. It is really helpful for the channel, and I very much appreciate it. Anyway, guys, thank you for logging me on. Thank you for watching this video. I'll catch you guys in the next video.